Welcome back to the afternoon session of our conference today. The third panel's topic will be crisis prevention and policy cooperation. Our distinguished panelists here consist of Mr. Takehiko Nakao, Japan's Vice Minister of Finance for International Affairs, Ministry of Finance. Mr. Jae-yoon Shin, Korea's first Vice Minister, Ministry of Strategy and Finance. Dr. Yoichi Nemoto, the Director of the ASEAN Plus 3 Macroeconomic Research Office, and Professor Iwan Aziz, the Head of the Office of Regional Economic Integration, the Asian Development Bank, and Cornell University. The panel will be moderated by Dr. Kanit Sangsupan, the Director of Thailand's Fiscal Policy Research Institute. Please welcome our panelist and moderator with a big round of applause. And Dr. Kanit, if you would now kindly proceed to begin the section. Thank you very much.
Welcome to the last panel sessions here. The topic will be a link to the first and the second. The last one will be the crisis preventions and policy coordinations. I have a very good four panelists here, very powerful. We have Nago, who is the Vice Minister of Finance, International Affairs, Japan. And I have Jae-yoon Shin, who is our old friends. He is now Vice Minister of Ministry of Strategies and Finance, Korea. And we have Nemoto, our very old friends too. He's now the Director of the AMRO. You should know the AMRO by now. Is the ASEAN Plus 3 Macroeconomic Research Office. Going to have a lot more roles in this kind of thing. And we have Dr. Iwan Aziz from ADB. He is now the head office regional economic integration. But one things we have as a common for my four panelists is that they all working in the regional corporations for a long time. Actually, not for some time, for a long time. Now is this linked to the focus of the third panel, which is the crisis prevention and policy coordinations. Mainly, we will. There has been discussed some crisis preventions on the second session, but this four guys has a very extensive experience in terms of policy preventions of the crisis and also working on the policy coordination. So far, what we have on the first and the second panel sessions, Asia has been escaped from crisis somehow, but not quite yet to be away from the risk that's going to be happening in the futures. Madame Lagarde said that the interconnectedness give promising benefits to the countries, but has some contagious effect and risk to be care of. The panelists said there has been a very big spillover of capital volatilities can happen, and Andrew Cheng has been supported that kind of spillover is a systematic problem. It's a systematic problem, and yet we do not really understand what it be like. For sure, one thing is that it cannot be solved by a single country policy. So you need the coordinations of the countries. He showed the data that it's as highly like electrical charge is getting larger and larger. You might not be able to resist in the futures. On the way out, Ravi talked something about the three ways of solving the problem. One is the macroeconomic policy itself. The second one is the macro-prudential itself. And the third one is the capital control or capital policy, capital flow response to the particular problem. And that will be the part of the thing. Now, according to this, we have... if we have to have the policy or we have to discuss, so there will be three angles around. The first one is an individual country's policy preventions or policy coordinations. And the second one is the regional corporations. And the third one might be what Andrew Cheng used, the recalibrating the whole system. So we have 3 levels, from the country level to the regional level to the global level. So that's the kind of scenario we have now. Actually, I would like to start from Right Minister Nago, if you have anything to add about the general topic of crisis prevention and policy coordination so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm really honored to speak in this important seminar. And I'd like to point 3 things. One is about how Asian countries have developed the safety net in the region, like Chiang Mai initiative. The second is about how individual countries can strengthen the economy and the system to prepare for the spillover from other region. We are still in the very difficult condition, especially because of the problems of Eurozone. And the third is what kind of things we can do in region again. So, but before going there, I'd like to make a comment about Mr. Andrew Shen's comment. And we are in a more difficult systemic condition because we have a lot more leveraging and financial assets and liabilities beyond the control of fiscal policies, and the portion to the GDP is much larger, including notional size scale of derivatives. It's beyond our imagination. But at the same time, it is also it is true that we must be very mindful, and we can't be complacent that the market can take care of things if we let the market work well. We must be mindful. But at the same time, if we look back human history from the period of barter trade, we have built up the money, we invented money, and asset and liability hand in hand increased a lot. And so in any countries, the financial asset and liability, especially in advanced economies, the portion is much larger than that of GDP. But it doesn't mean necessarily that the system is unstable. If the central bank should repay all the money they issue, if private sector asks to repay all the debts all of a sudden, of course they cannot. But if we have a certain level of trust in the system, and if we have a certain stop by the government, it's okay. So no one can question the value of money, even if it is just a paper. So we need a good balance of the caution and also the sense of trust in the system. The first point is about the Chiang Mai initiative. The Japan initiated the discussion by Asian Monetary Fund just after Thai crisis in 1997. And at that moment, Asian Monetary Fund was not agreed by the countries, and partly because of opposition from the IMF and the United States. And the reason is they thought, the Asian Monetary Fund would cause a moral hazard, because if there is easy money without a strong condition, it would harm the system, global system. But in the end, we agreed to doubling the size of a Chiang Mai initiative multilateral in the April meeting of ASEAN Plus 3 this year. And we have now the preventive facility, and we have now AMRO, which is secretariat to the Chiang Mai initiative. And we are even starting to make this institution treaty-based international organization. So it means that we already have the Asian Monetary Fund, de facto Asian Monetary Fund, even more than that, because we are now trying to have a treaty to have this. When we proposed Asian Monetary Fund, we didn't try to make it an international organization based on treaty in the beginning. So in that regard, we already went beyond the idea of Asian Monetary Fund. I think this is a really important exercise of a region to have peer pressures, and also to have a very close dialogue between countries. Of course, resolution mechanism is important and preventive facility is important. But what is more important is to have a close communication between countries and to advise each other to know the situations of neighboring countries better. I think this is really important. And I wonder what made this possible when we tried to do that at the Asian Monetary Fund proposal of 1997. It was not successful, but why could we do this? I think it is because the Asian countries are now stronger in terms of economy power itself and governance and policy management. They are much better than in 1997, 1998. And at that moment, Japan was maybe a single country who could support other countries because of huge reserves and so on. But today, most of Asian countries, ASEAN plus 3 countries, have much more reserves. So the assistance is 2 ways or the multiple directions instead of from Japan, for instance, to other countries. So, ASEAN plus 3 is much stronger. That's why we could make it. And also, because of Eurozone problem and the American problem, the financial crisis is not just about the Asia. At the moment, there was a discussion that Asia had a financial crisis because of weak governance, crony capitalism, and so on. It is, unique to Asia. But it is obvious that it's not unique to Asia, and Eurozone has even more trouble. And it's very natural that we support each other, within the region. So I think this is a great achievement of the region. That is one point. And the second point is, in addition to Chairman Initiative, there are many dimensions of the cooperation in the region. That is the ADBIMF, Asian Bond Market Initiative. It's very important to use the saving of Asia for the Asian investment. And there are also initiatives to use more local currencies for the transactions between countries, including the usage of renminbi by neighboring countries. And Korea and Japan have been trying to make our currencies used in international trade more. And I think the ASEAN countries are doing the same kind of initiative. I think these elements are also important, not to depend too much on the dollar liquidity. And when we had the Lehman crisis, there was a trouble of financing trade and investment because we were so much dependent on the dollar liquidity. And Japanese banks, which are now stronger than 1990s, complement the leveraging impact of European countries. So those are the also important elements of a safety net. And third, I'd like to point a little bit about the individual countries' efforts. That is, in the end, the safety net is not just by supporting each other, but the most important resilience comes from the individual countries' efforts to make the economy and the finance stronger, fiscal situation stronger. And in the Japanese case, what is most important is to have a stronger consolidation efforts of fiscal deficit and aging society. In a sense, Japan is a front runner of problems of countries, aging and the fiscal deficit and the building up of debt and so on. So if we can address this issue well, I think we can provide a lesson to other countries. And some other countries, of course, there are. Korea and China are growing fast, and other countries are growing fast. But depending on country situation, there are certain challenges like a middle-income trap or social safety net building and so on. So what is important is for each country to address the issues they are facing. And in case of developing economies like Cambodia or Vietnam and Laos, what is important is to keep macroeconomic stability and to build the more infrastructure and to take care of education and so on. And in that regard, Myanmar is a really important case for ASEAN plus 3 and for ASEAN countries because Myanmar is in transition And the international community, including the United States, is now removing sanctions. And I think Myanmar, how to support Myanmar's development and transition and also democratization is a very important element of our regional cooperation. So what I want to say in the end is individual countries' effort is important, but regional cooperation, which is about the dialogue and the peer pressures and the support by loans and so on, those are also very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a very good framework you laying out. I think Nagao-san, you don't feel much about the contagious. We think that they have some achievement here. Jae-yoon, what do you think? Do you need that the system we have is good enough? Actually, from Nagao-san said, it's like we have to depend on not only from Japan now, but we have to depend on the relationship between the +3s to be the key supporter to the ASEAN +3 program that we have.
Okay, there are a lot of achievements in Asian economic cooperation, especially from CMIM, ABMI. There are many initiatives. But I want to compare these times with 2008. So 2008, Lehman Brothers suddenly collapsed. So at that time, many countries has some policy rooms to address these issues. So advanced countries lower the interest rate and supply liquidities, and also the emerging countries also supply liquidities and fiscal stimulus. So at the time some general consensus was achieved. So relatively, we overcame for some time the crisis. But these days, while the advanced countries don't have much room to implement their policy measures, the interest rate is already nearly to zero, and there are some liquidity supply was already done. So it may be some detrimental to the future economy. Well, even though there is some room for emerging countries to have some policy measures, but I think it's limited compared to the 2008 case. So then what are the options? What are the options to address the crisis from European crisis, and there are some effect on the emerging countries, including Asian market. So I think we need a kind of some collective action globally, regionally. So at the time in 2008, so the U.S. initiatives, so they had some G20 ad hoc meeting. So the leaders come together, so they declare, so it's the time to spend money, it's the time to use the fiscal measures. So at the time but nowadays there is no kind of some momentum to initiate these kind of some issues. So I propose kind of some grand plan for political leaders. Then what are the contents? Well, I think we are too much concentrated in financial measures, fiscal. Some deficit or some monetary policy, but we need a kind of some real sector policies, like to boost the trade, for example. So they should declare some WTO and FTA. There are many some real sector boostment measures. So that kind of some action will be a basis for us to overcome the crisis. So, and the other Asian, Nagao-san already talked about some Asian, some cooperation. So, of course, there is a lot of achievement, but it's a long way to go. So, CMIM, even though it's double-sized, I think it's too small for all member countries to act collectively. and also ABMI, well, there is some progress, but it's a long way to go, of course. So I think we should hurry up. So as you see in the European case, well, it's too late when something happens. So I want to propose 3 principles. First one is it should be preemptive. The second one is decisive. And third one is sufficient. So I think already we don't have much hand. We don't have many hands on our policymakers. I think politicians should take these rules. So that's why Brother Sang is in the morning session said, well, he cautiously optimistic, but I cautiously pessimistic on the crisis. So I think we need some very preemptive, decisive, and sufficient measures to agree. If not, well, some pessimistic.
In which forum you thinking about how many countries to be coordinated to be that one?
Well, I think
ASEAN plus 3 should be
ASEAN
enough.
plus 3. Well, it's step by step. So, well, as the first defense line is very defensive. Some measures like to have their fundamentals sound, and also to accumulate their foreign reserves as a first defense. And the bilateral level, when Nagao-san discussed, we made some swap agreement with the Japan and China. In advance of crisis. So that is a example of a preemptive measure. And third one is a regional level. So I think ASEAN plus 3 is a good example. So we need to double. I think it's double the size of the CMIM amount. And finally, it's a global. So what is the some architecture for international leaders agree? Then I think it's still World G20 is effective. So in 2008, I vividly remember November 15. Just at the time is October 20. The President Bush initiated this meeting. It's only 3 weeks ahead of some schedule. So it's maybe a little bit some diplomatically kind of some rude to the other leaders, but it was effective. So I think it's our some G20 is I think is only, but not best, but I think it's a scheme to control these issues.
Good. If this conference can lead to that kind of Jae-yun suggests will be very fruitful, actually. That's addressed right to you, Nemoto-san. The thing is that before we can do that, we got to have a preemptive kind. You have to do the country surveillance, what country are doing, what country are preparing for, how much they have the room to take initiative. So that's come to implementations at the AMRO. So please, whatever you have.
Yeah, looking back the development of the Asian Financial Cooperation, just I would like to supplement the Nakao-san's presentation, but the most important step we took is the introduction of so-called single agreement in 2010, the CMIM. Before up to 2010, as you know, that Chiang Mai was a network of bilateral swaps, and many ASEAN countries deem themselves as potential borrowers. So when something happens, they think they resort to the CMI for the short-term liquidity shortage. But after the introduction of single agreement, every country are supposed to be both potential borrowers as well as potential lenders. And I noticed that a great change of mindset of ASEAN countries. Many major ASEAN countries had deemed themselves as potential lenders in this framework. And after that, they have been very keen on neighbor countries' policies. many Western observers said that policy dialogue in East Asia is impossible because Asians are very polite and modest and hesitate to make comments to other countries' policies. But now, after 2010, many countries deem themselves the potential lenders. They are making very harsh comments, questions in ASEAN Plus 3 conferences. So it's a great change of mentality.
How the peer review now?
Yeah,
Very straightforward.
straightforward, and also I think AMRO, our office, surveillance unit of the ASEAN Plus 3, served some role of stimulating discussion because we try to provide details. Before that, every country make its own presentation and some country make questions, but we try to make a very frank assessment of one country, which excite the potential country, but also induce the many questions and criticisms from the other countries. So I think after 2010 that this regional financial cooperation went one step higher, and which I think because of the recognition of the shocks from the external side, but that is a basis for the introduction of the crisis prevention function agreed by ministers and governors this May.
Oh, thank you very much. Actually, before go to the assist, I have one curiosity from many people. The system that we have in regional cooperation has never been tested before. Are we confident that it's going to work it out when the crisis comes? We have the buffer enough? We have the mechanisms available right now?
We have so many procedures and agreements, but it is true that it has never been tested, and we don't know how it works. And also, the question we have to make preparation very well is cooperation between global and regional and bilateral framework. So, for example, put it concretely that major ASEAN 4 countries have each can draw 23 billion USD under the HMI framework. But usually they have almost the equivalent amount that they can draw from the fund. And many ASEAN 4 countries have a bilateral swap arrangement either from Japan or China. So my question is that we have to coordinate those 3 initiatives very nicely. And I'm very pleased to hear that very same message was I heard from the Madam Lugao this morning. So the coordination among global and regional and bilateral individual should be. That is a key challenge.
Yes,
key challenge we have to conquer.
Thank you very much. Ase-san, you have been represent many academics in this area for some times, including now ADB. What's the role of ADB, you think, in terms of reinforcing this kind of thing? There's a lot of mechanisms at ADB now, so including taking care of the ABMI, being secretariat of ASEAN Plus 3, those and there's many way around. You think we need any kind of reinforcement from what we have as mechanism so far?
Well, the short answer is yes, but let me elaborate that. The problem is I tend to agree with all the 3 speakers before, and that is a problem because usually 4 economics have 6 different opinions, but this time I happen to agree. The only thing is that precisely your last question, is this enough? And my short answer is it's not enough. And my argument is the following. There are many facts that is happening now in the global economy. Let me just mention 3 facts. Fact number 1, which was discussed in first session, is new normal. What is the new normal now? The new normal is that industrial countries' growth has been lackluster, has been slowing, whereas the emerging markets economy, especially Asia, has been doing very well. So it's double track growth and so forth. What does that mean? Well, there is an additional information that there is a difference in terms of monetary and financial policies in industrial countries and emerging market economies. So what all this means, capital flows, and indeed we have been observing massive capital flows coming to the region and so forth. What does that mean? That creates all kinds of risk, because we all know capital flows is a double sword. It has some benefit as well as some risk. And if you look at all the episodes of crisis in the past, it's always preempted, a precursor by the capital inflows. So the point here is that there is a risk. That's fact number one. Fact number two, again, it was brought up during the first session, the awareness of the interconnectedness of the economy, especially the financial sector in the world, including in the region. What does it translate? It's similar. It translates there is a risk of contagion, because the more you're interconnected, the more the probability of contagion is greater and so forth. The last one, which is, I have a sense it's a less recognized, and that is, if there will be a new crisis, which it will, because I strongly believe crisis will come. What we don't know is when and where. But when it comes, there is a great probability that the source of the vulnerabilities as well as the channel of transmission will be different than in the past. So in other words, it's not really, mimicking what has happened in the past. What does all this mean? It means the prevention is getting more difficult. And in that context, I would like to argue that despite all that has been done by the ASEAN Plus 3, CMIM, ABMI, and so forth, I'm afraid it's not enough. Of course, it has been improved, and the good news is it's moving in the right direction. For example, they increased the size of the committed amount within the CMIM, the latest one being doubling to 240 billion. But even 240 billion is only 5% of the total foreign reserve of the entire ASEAN Plus 3. And keep in mind that when we talk about this amount committed, it's basically what we are trying to display is a demonstration to the market. Because the whole idea about this prevention or financial safety net is really to convince the market that the region is ready to prevent whatever move that the market player is going to do. So many people argue that 240 billion is not enough. So that's one. The second is about the practicality in terms of the link with the IMF. I really sort of admire and commend the ASEAN Plus 3 officials for making this link with the IMF, because it's so important. Again, the argument is interconnectedness. The interconnectedness not only within the region, but also between region and the global economy, especially Asia. Asia has been doing well in the past is precisely because it's being open financially as well as in terms of trade, meaning that what's happening in the global economy will affect Asia and so on. So the interconnectedness is there, and as a result, linking with the global institution, or I call it the global financial safety net, like the IMF, it's important. The question is how big? Now, we know that recently it has been reduced from 80% to 70%. Now, reality shows that that itself may prevent the actual implementation or actual use of the CMIM. See, this is the thing. Yes, it is not being tested. There's a good news that it's not being tested. That means there is no crisis, there is no country in the region is in crisis, right? But precisely because what I said earlier, the new crisis will be different. It will be even more faster, and the channel of transmission may be more complex. Precisely because of that, I personally think what is now on the table is not enough. It is in the right direction, but it's not enough. The good news is, of course, the awareness about all this interconnectedness, the awareness that the domestic financial safety net, which is basically self-defense in individual country, it's not enough. Yes, I agree that at the end of the day, the defense has to come from individual country. But unfortunately, because of the global nature of the financial sector, interconnectedness, it will not be enough. It is from this perspective, I personally like to see that the regional financial safety net, through the regional financial arrangement, must be strengthened. And I really hope that the institution that Nomoto-san is heading is moving faster and stronger.
Thank you very much. Very striking. I think that the point of the ASIS is that we are on the right directions, but not yet enough. There's a lot of things to do. But I believe that it's not that opposed to other people said. Nemoto said that we're going to have a very good and better monitoring system and better peer review. And Yun said that we need to have a preemptive policy forum. I mean, to prepare for that. We don't know yet what's the measures be like, but we should start to discuss the issues, what to be the new kind of crisis we're going to face in the future. So that's something we agree upon. But all of the point is that it's not that easy right now that you put money on the table and say to the people, we have credibilities to solve the problem. It's not that enough on that point, right? We need to have some more of this policy and directive and coordination in the political side. Other thing else will come follow suit, and that's preemptive forum should be a focus. Do you have anything now, Okasan?
Oh yes, it is true that we are in a more riskier world than before. As I said, because of money, because of derivatives, because of assets and liabilities, we are in a more difficult condition than previous time. Until, for instance, 1970s, we had the Bretton Woods system of a fixed exchange rate, and there was not so much thing about like swap and the derivatives and so on because of a fixed exchange rate and the regulated interest rate. But at that moment, we controlled the capital flows between countries. Current account transactions were supposed to be free, but we meant to control the capital transactions to keep a fixed exchange rate and the stability of the macroeconomies of the countries. But after 1970s, we gave up the idea of fixing exchange rate and starting liberalizing financial market and cross-border capital transactions. So it invited more risks, but at the same time, it invited a lot of growth for many countries because of free flow of money. Capital facilitated higher growth in emerging countries, higher growth of venture capitals and so on. So overall, although we are in a more difficult situation, we enjoy higher growth, and if we look at the emerging countries of Asia, this is a tremendous achievement. So what I want to say is there is no one-size-fits-all solution or panacea to this riskier world. So what we should do is many things. In the dimension of geography, we must address issues of individual countries depending on the country's situation. In some countries, there is a risk of a bubble. In Japan, the risk is more about continued deflation. So we should address the individual countries' case, and also we should have a regional cooperation. But regarding Chairman Initiative, for instance, it was not tested. So of course, we must continue to strengthen it, but there is also a certain limit about it. But what I want to say is, if we have such a close coordination between countries, if something wrong happens, it's easier to mobilize the resources of countries, whether it is bilateral or regional or the global. when we had a trouble in Thailand and Indonesia in 1997, although we didn't have a chain money initiative, we still could mobilize money of countries to rescue things. So if we have such a system of chain money initiative, we definitely, it would definitely help the mobilizing the rescue package of countries. So it's not perfect, but I think it's a very big step forward. And also regarding policies, we should look at the macro economic macro prudence together with the micro prudence. And as Mr. Menon said, we cannot be complacent that the market would take care of risk management and so on. We should be more mindful about the risk of bubble and financial instability. So what I want to say is, of course, we cannot be sufficient anytime. But by doing so many things together, regional, bilateral, and country level, and also macro policies and macro prudence and the regulations, better regulations, so on, we can. I hope we can address things step by step. No. But we cannot be in perfect condition. Yes. Forever, yes. As far as we are growing.
I think we have the instrument for many things around that have been tested, but we think it's going to be well prepared when the things come. The question to Jae-yoon is that if you predict that kind of thing is going to come in a big way, you know, and you said something about the policy preemptive forum, as you said, what should be done from now on to that kind of time institute?
Well, this morning we discussed the interconnectedness. So its interconnectedness is so severe to address this crisis easily. That means the best policy at this time is to prevention. So that's why we are talking about some regional cooperation scheme, because for the prevention. So, well, when nowadays, when I think when the crisis occurred, it's too late. So, so how to prevent the crisis is the best policy. So, just look at 2008 and 2011 crisis. So we had a lot of experiences, crisis experience, but at that time is kind of some specific country crisis or some specific area crisis, SNL, tequila crisis, Asian crisis. But nowadays there is no more regional or no more specific sector, specific country crisis. It's a global crisis. That means there is no more tail risk. This is a body risk. So look at Greece. Greece is only 2% of Eurozone. But when Greece is turbulence, then the whole Eurozone is in turmoil. So that's the recent change of the characteristics of a crisis. So that means we need some prevention, some scheme. So it's kind of some mental game, psychology game with the market. So when I believe some boom and bust theory in financial markets. So somebody, it's a little bit risky, then everybody goes out. When there's some profits, then everyone goes in. So that's kind of some fluctuation is getting some bigger because a lot of interconnected. So in that sense, I want to emphasize the surveillance and policy coordination. So surveillance system, so we set up some MNO. So I had a very much expectation on MNO's role. So, and the other one is policy coordination. As you see, this a country's policy affect the other country's circumstances. So that is the name of this spillover effects. So how to control the spillover effect is our challenge. So recently, the IMF published the spillover report for 5 countries. It's a big achievement, but my sense is too late and too short of what should be done. So I think we need kind of some roadmap for the policy coordination. So I would call it kind of some analogy to kind of some the optimal policy area some coordination. Area. So then this kind of some policy coordination is straightly collide with sovereignty issue. So how to solve these issues is very important. So I think it's a homework of the IMF. So what area, to what extent, the policy coordination should be implemented. That is the first question. So my sense, the first step is kind of some information sharing. Is in certain area is very important. So recently, the China, Korea, and Japan agreed on the investment on government bond. So that means we will share the investment on the government bond of each country. So we call it some framework, some agreement on government bonds. So we understand what's the position of the other countries. So now Chinese and central bank some invest a lot of money in Korean treasury bond, for example. So we, in advance, we gather some information. Then we prepare for them some side effect of the bonds market, some turbulence, for example. So nowadays, is a central bank. All of the world, central bank has 40% of our Korean government bonds. That is a kind of some change. So I think it's this kind of some procedure will be needed, and we need a more aggressive one to be agreed on.
But do you think it's not come in a big way so far? That kind of should be more.
Well, it's a Thailand government, the central bank has a lot of money, so it's, so we will have another agreement in Thailand.
Nemato-san, questions asked to you now. Whether we ready enough, AMRO is ready enough to do some kind of roadmap for policy angle in the regions to do some preparations like that. Are we ready enough to go another step forward, or what kind of information sharing or what the input should be like?
Thank you very much. The first question is the very important lesson we learned from Greece case is the importance of credibility of data or information sharing. The
yes, that's right.
very manipulated budget number caused such a big mess. But I have to admit that in ASEAN plus 3 countries, some countries' data is not ready,
some
or
are
not made to public, or some apparent bias for many reasons. So the one important, very basic, very fundamental, but we cannot avoid of creating good data, statistics among ASEAN plus 3 countries. Of course, it will take a long time for certain countries, but I'm very glad that you pointed out, you asked me to this question, because that is the issue I have to
you have to put forward,
put
and make a
priority on. And the second issue is that how to dialogue with the market. So we are macroeconomic research office, but I put emphasis on the market developments or financial developments, because if we analyze the data of 3 months ago, 6 months ago, I do not helpful to the authorities who are facing today's problem or in near future's problem. So I have to train my economists very attentive to the market developments and what kind of potential risks the current developments face. So this is very critical, but we have to, even though we are named and the macroeconomic research office, I would like to put emphasis on the analysis of the how to make good dialogue with the market. And I completely agree with Nakao-san that we are not allowed to be complacent. If we are complacent, the market dialogue will not become less effective. And we have to be attentive to the needs of the market participants.
So actually, we are supporting you, Nemoto-san. I think the Emerald just started a few years ago, so it's a long way to go, and we need, as everybody said, we need you to go quicker and do much more rigorous kind of thing. Come back to assist. Actually, you have been listened to all the trees that they need to do more on that, on this. Do you have anything to add on what the preemptive kind of thing that? Particularly, exchange rate, interest rate, policy coordinations, or another kind of reserve setting up to Asia Bond Initiative to go faster in which directions?
Okay, as the name shows, ASEAN Plus 3 Macroeconomic Research Office, I think they have to deal with all these macroeconomic issues, including the exchange rate. Now, before the collapse of Lehman in October 2008, most of the thinking about AMRO is really to analyze the impact on the crisis, that is the weakening of the currencies. But then after the Lehman, the region suffered completely the opposite trend, that is strengthening of the currency because of the massive capital inflows and so on. So to me, it doesn't matter. That kind of issue, whether it's weakening of the exchange rate or the strengthening, that should be part of the AMRO kind of analysis, because the whole idea of AMRO is really to help member countries to stabilize their macroeconomic and financial policies. On the ABMI, I'm quite optimistic, because if I go back to the original objective of the ABMI, the original objective is to prevent another double mismatch.
Yes,
because we know what happened in 1997 is, currency mismatch as well as maturity mismatch. And what happened after the inaugurations of the ABMI in 2003, I observed the growth of the bonds market in the regions has been quite strong. Now, I know there are some criticism against that, in the sense that they don't see the cross-border holding of the bonds market, because basically Asian investors are either local buyers or global buyers, not regional buyers, meaning Thai investors prefer to invest in Thai or in the US or Europe rather than other Asian countries and so forth. But after the Lehman collapse, we started to see change in that. But still, if we look at the bonds market itself, the cross-border holding is relatively small. It's less than 10% actually. But I'm not worried about that, because if the local bonds market has been growing, that itself is already sort of answering the original objective, not having double mismatch, because we are using local currency, even though it's not other region in Asia, but at least local currency. And the second is, it's mostly long-term, it's not short-term. So from that standpoint, I'm pretty optimistic with the bonds market development.
But the other objective when we do the ABMI is that we need to have the cross-investment of our reserve to other country bond. Thailand invests in Indian bond, in won bond, and in rupees bond, that kind of thing, instead of flowing the money to US dollar kind of denomination. I don't see that kind of thing going up in a big way. So am I correct?
It is happening, especially after 2008. So we observe very carefully the development. As I said earlier, the Asian investors are either local buyers or global buyers. But after 2008, it's mostly local buyers. So it's not so much investing in other Asian countries, but within their own country, which is okay, because again, double mismatch is not there. What is interesting to observe is really efforts made by ASEAN Plus 3 officials. And again, I commend the officials, because what they are doing, at least from what I've observed from participating in the AFDM and AFMM, is that they try to remove the remaining obstacles. Because when we do the survey, we found out the reason why Asian investors are not regional buyers: familiarity. lack of familiarity. So Malaysian investors are not so familiar about settlement payment in other ASEAN countries, for example. So, and I noticed that ASEAN Plus 3 official is trying to harmonize this standard, harmonize the rules and so forth. So with that, I'm pretty optimistic that even the cross-border holding of the bonds market will increase in the coming years.
Do you have anything to add, Yun, on this?
Well, I think it's to develop ABMI more effectively. As Ian Ajis, Professor Ajis said, whereas we needed some infrastructure building efforts needed. So we have different systems across the country. So we need to develop some common but generalized scheme for member countries to invest each other. So that is, I think, very important thing. So I think we need some compatibility issues. There are many deregulation issues. So that's why we need to hurry up in a sense of these some
I think
barriers.
you have been devoted to not to do just bond market initiative. You want to go further to the capital market initiative.
Yes, so Korea initiated some, it's not only for the bonds, so we need to broaden the concept to capital market itself. So, but it's a very beginning stage, so we need to study things more.
Okay, thank you very much. I have half an hour to go. I would like to call for the questions from the floor, if you like. Anybody want to ask any questions? Just raise your hand and state your names, and please do the work. Kawai-san, please.
Thank you very much, and excellent presentations. I have a question to Vice Minister Nakao and Vice Minister Shin, and also I have a question from Mr. Nemoto. Ivan Aziz talked about good progress on CMI, but perhaps still the CMI may not be sufficient. Vice Minister Nakao said that, we cannot be perfect, but we are making good progress. I think I fundamentally agree. But looking ahead, I believe that the current structure of the Chiang-Mai initiative may be limited. The total amount, $240 billion. And the assumption is that if all countries were affected simultaneously, then the $240 billion would be divided among all 13 countries plus Hong Kong. I think, basically this sort of approach has a huge limitation. First of all, maybe Japan and China, may never be borrowers from Chiang-Mai initiative. But under the current Chiang-Mai initiative, Japan can borrow and China can borrow. And actually the amount of money that Japan and China can borrow would be very small relative to the total economic size and financial market. So it doesn't make much sense to assume that Japan and China can borrow. And even under the current $240 billion scheme, the amount that the individual country can borrow, maximum cap, is still small. So maybe a fundamental sort of a change in the Chiang-Mai initiative may be needed. In the case of the European Financial Stability Facility, one country can borrow a very large amount. but the Chiang-Mai Initiative does not allow that. And a precautionary line was introduced, which is an excellent idea. But again, to make sure that the market would have confidence, you need to put a very large amount on the table, hoping that you don't have to use money, but a large amount of money is needed. And here, again, the amount of money to be put is very small. So the fundamental, way of approaching the Chiang-Mai Initiative may be necessary. So I want to hear from Vice Minister Nakao and Vice Minister Shin
that's a
on
challenge.
that. And I have a question.
Sorry, please.
Okay. I have actually a suggestion to Mr. Nemoto. The ASEAN Plus 3 Macroeconomic Research Office, also macroeconomic, but the challenge is, issues that go beyond macroeconomic, simply macroeconomic, because many other things can affect fiscal situations. And of course, sovereign debt management is a very important issue. We are learning that from the Eurozone crisis. Financial sector supervision is also a very important issue. We are learning this from the global financial crisis and the Eurozone financial crisis, and various other structural issues affecting fiscal conditions of countries, like public sector management. In Greece, we are seeing this as a very important issue. And for many Asian countries, SOE issue can be quite important. A pension system, various other and labor market issues and so forth. So to me, the current size of AMRO is too small.
Yes.
Too small. It's tiny.
21 already.
So
that's going on.
So over the next several years, maybe AMRO needs to be expanded much more significantly.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a good support. Okay, Nago-san.
Oh, yes. It's a very difficult question, but to me, the financing or firewalls is not the only solution to prevent the crisis. In case of the IMF also, or the United States and Japan can borrow from the IMF, that is a mutual lending of foreign reserves from the beginning. And the size of usable financing resources of the IMF until the Lehman was $250 billion. This is usable, so the total quota is much larger. But the IMF was limited by scale to avoid the moral hazard. And what is more important is surveillance and advices over policies. So to me, to have a big firewalls or safety net is an important element of securing, ensuring stability. But even in Europe, even if they introduced the EFSF and ESM as a permanent structure after the EFSF, the market is not convinced yet. Because what we need is stronger policies of countries, not just the firewalls. Firewalls is just the firewalls, or the safety net is to support the liquidity. But what they must do is to, address the more longer-term issues of imbalances of fiscal and balance of payments. So, yes. Of course, the larger the better, it is true, but there is a certain limit what the safety net can do. And so in that regard, I think we should, of course, continue to discuss what is the appropriate scale size of the Chiang-Mai initiative. But I think we don't need to pay attention just to the number or scale, because the system or mechanism of closer communications, and the setting of a firewall itself is an important step forward. So to have a stability, well, again, what is needed is good policies over countries and regions and so on. So firewalls, safety net is important, but it's not panacea. And about Asia, I would like to mention that instead of course, we must be concerned and prepared for the spillover from Europe, but what we should also focus is how to strengthen the growth and development of the region. There are a lot of potential in this region. China is growing very fast. Korea is growing very robustly, and the ASEAN countries are growing more and more dependent on domestic and regional demand. And there are new frontiers like, as I said, Myanmar. So to have a stronger growth in this region is the best way to prevent crisis, to make the region more resilient to the outside shock. And also it is good for the world economy as a whole. So instead of worrying just about contagion from other regions and to build up a larger safety net, I think there are many things we can do. But at the same time, I agree to you that we should also try to strengthen the safety net.
Jae-yun?
Okay, so the current CMIM system has two limitations. First one is Kawai-san already talked, the size itself. And the second one is the surveillance function. So it may boost some moral hazard if just the double or some triple the size of the CMIM. So I think we have two limitations, but AMNO was launched, so I agree. So we need some more resources on AMNO, including the number of the economists and functions, and so we need to back up the facilities of the AMNO. So I fully agree, and also I will support, as long as I stay in the government. But the size itself, so you're right. The size, so that's why I am asking the more some size, the increase the size of the CMIM. But one thing is I want to clear is nobody in the market doesn't expect Japan or China borrow money from CMIM. So if that's kind of some situation occur, then it's not a crisis, it's a disaster. So it's a global some disaster, it's not the crisis. So I think as a recipient country, to put it very bluntly, some remaining countries, the recipient countries of the CMIM. So in that sense, but even the remaining countries considered, the size is I think is small, but in order to increase the size, itself, we need to strengthen the surveillance function. I think is the best, a very important thing. And the other one is, Professor Ajay mentioned, some the linkage with IMF is also should be conditioned by the surveillance function. If not, then I think it's a moral hazard issue will be a hard issue in this area.
Yes. Thank you very much. Actually, when I look to these issues, I recall when we start to have the so-called self-help mechanisms, it's depending on the lines of defense that we have. The first line of defense we discuss is about the domestic issues, how we can supervise the domestic economy, how can we have the growth and the stability. That's come first. That's the first line of defense. The second line of defense is our reserve. If we can park our reserve to our neighboring countries, that when things happen, we can bring it back to solve the liquidity problem. And the third line of defense we talk about is CMIM plus with IMF. That's it. If we can do that, if we can balance and have the three components line of defense clearly to the public that we're going to have this, so we might have the preventive policy forum we're talking about. I think that might be very creative. Any questions so far? Andrew, you have anything? Atanarongchai, you have anything to add?
A lady.
I'm sorry, I didn't see it clearly. Please. Please state your names and raise the questions to any one of us, please do.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Phạm Chi Lan. I come from Vietnam.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
A country as ASEAN member and also a country in big trouble today in economic development and also in the financial system. Where I fully agree with what you, the panelists, just refer to on the need for cooperation in the policy and the efforts each country need to raise in order to prevent the crisis. But I think also in our area, particularly within ASEAN, we have 4 countries which are still in transitional period. They are Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and Myanmar. So in these countries, we still fail to have similar norms or standard that you have in other countries. So in that basis, it is not easy for information sharing or for policy cooperation. Mr. Kanemoto was quite right in commented recently that some countries in Chiang Mai initiative fail to provide information. Vietnam is one of them, because even in Vietnam, for the population, we randomly know about the real picture of the financial system in the country. For example, just 2 months ago, the State Bank of Vietnam, the Central Bank of Vietnam, declared that the non-performing debts, non-performing loans or bad debts among the banking system in Vietnam was at the level of 3.6%. But 1 month later, he had to recognize that, in fact, it was about 10%. He had to say that when he suggested the Parliament of Vietnam to allow him to set up a fund of about $5 billion for buying bad loans from the banks in order to restructure the banking system. So when the Parliament asked why you need so much money, he had to recognize that the bad loan in Vietnam today is at the level of about 10%. Also similarly, the financial minister of Vietnam had to report to the government very big debt in the state-run enterprises of Vietnam. It equal to about $12 billion or 10% of the GDP in Vietnam. The debt of SOE, and the big part of it is bad loan, bad debt of SOE. So it means when we use different standards to talk about the debts or the loans, the figure may be quite different. So in order for countries like Vietnam to prevent crisis, we need to adopt better or more international standard in analyzing the economy and assessing the risks in the economy. So we strongly urge ADB, IMF, as well as the AMRO and all of you to urge countries like Vietnam to improve our own system and to accept, to adopt international standard.
Okay.
Yeah, in order to avoid risk.
Thank you very much.
And secondly, I have a small suggestion. We are talking a lot about cooperation, but we are talking mainly about the cooperation between government and business, and a number of researchers in the research organization of Mr. Nemoto. But I think we also need to try to encourage more consultation and participation by people in our countries. Because, from time to time again, like in a country like Vietnam, we have a policy making process within the government or between the government and some groups of large businesses.
Okay.
And the policy may neglect the majority of people, the poor people, the vulnerable ones. vulnerable groups in the society. So I fully agree with that, what the managing director of the IMF commented this morning on the role of women. Women were also those who used to receive the most bad impacts from the crisis in the world or in our home country. So we need to consult them more and give the people or the community more chance to participate in policy making process as well as in supervising the implementation of policies by the governments.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's the view from the woman. That's very glad to listen to. Nemoto-san, your emerald is very famous now.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really fully agree with you that I'm very pleased that you pointed out the importance of very credible data and importance of the publicly available data. And also we will try to have a dialogue with the Vietnamese people, not authorities or not academic people, but we try to understand the people's voice, so we will try our best. Let me make one comment to the Kawai-san's suggestion that AMRO was established last year, and official opening was January this year. Okay. We first participated ASEAN Plus meeting in November last year, so we are very new. But I'm very pleased that so many requests and so many demands from various, and I'm sometimes overwhelmed, but on this moment we will do our best. And we are requesting just like Kawai-san said, that market experts, banking sector experts, debt experts, tax experts, because if you authority ask us to do some surveillance work for the crisis prevention, we need those expertise. If we just do the crisis resolution, maybe the one country, one specialist for this particular country would be enough. But for the preventing crisis, we need those talented people and human resources. And I'm particularly happy that the Kawai-san mentioned on this issue in front of Nakao-san and Shin-san and the Permanent Secretary Aripon, because I counted these three have a majority of the ASEAN Plus voting. So I'm very pleased that the Kawai-san suggested this issue.
Okay. Iwan, you are the head of Office of the Regional Economic Integrations. Can you have anything to help CLMV to do on the data, on the quicker integrations to the ASEAN Plus 3 we're talking about?
Oh, the easy answer is, of course, yes, but at the end of the day, it depends on the country itself, whether they're more willing to give the information and so forth. But on the integration, I'm quite optimistic because, I personally see, if I may say a few minutes, not as an ADB, but as an observer, I'm seeing something dramatically happening in the region, because if I look at all the data about trade, finance, the degree of integration is tremendous. It's increasing very fast, very fast. And that itself, of course, it's a good development, but at the same time pose all kinds of challenges, because when you are changing the system, moving from one system to another, there's all kinds of implications, and this is the unknown here. So the challenge is really to understand better what's the implications of this huge increase in the degree of integration.
Thank you. Actually, I think, still anyone want to ask the last question so far? Igas? Please, some microphone up there.
Thank you very much. My name is Alberto Isgut from Economic and Social Commission of Asia and the Pacific. Well, thank you very much. I mean, this has been a tremendous, seminar, very interesting. I would like to have a question. I have a question in particular as I would like to know the opinion if CMIM is something that can be expanded to other countries. I know that there's already, work in progress. There's a lot of work being done, but it would be interesting to know, possibly ASEAN+6, possibly in the future some cooperation with SAARC. I would like to know your opinion. Thank you.
ASEAN+6, should we go or should we not? That's very difficult questions. Amro, Nemoto-san, do you have any?
No, this question I have to be silent. I have to refrain from making any comment. It's a decision of the authorities.
I think it's the political kind of question so far. We work on the ASEAN+3 after the crisis. So that's what we call the self-help mechanisms. We try to do ourselves to help. Actually, when we're talking about, I can reflect what the ASEAN+3 thinks on these issues now. If you're talking about the trade cooperations, trade liberalization in ASEAN+6, I don't think we have any objections so far, or it's come easily. For the reason that the trade has been open for some time, we can, like in case of Thailand, we have the FTA, ASEAN with India, ASEAN with Australia. If it has integrated, so that's no problem around, including China, Korea. But when we're talking about the finance, we need to have some kind of very cautious kind of grouping. Cautious in the sense that we can talk easily to each other and we closely understand. Remember, in ASEAN+3, we have been developed this one for more than 15 years, so that's been understanding. As I recall, because at the first times that Thailand went to crisis in 1997, Professor Takatoshi Ito told us that Japan cannot give a good helping hand because they don't really understand Thailand's situation at that day. So they can give the partial and it has to be under the IMF. Since then, we start the program in order to understand each other more. Then if we want to expand to ASEAN+6, meaning that we have to start to dig it down to understand India and other economy, and it has some forum to do so, but it goes step by step. It cannot be done easily in one day. I replied for you all because they are official, they don't want to say anything. Okay. If that's the case, I come to the conclusions. Of course, if you have any last word to say.
Yeah.
Yes, please. No, yes, please.
Yeah, I have 3 comments. One is about the budget of the AMRO. We will continue to support the budget of the AMRO, including the staffing for the preventive measures. The second point is about ASEAN+6. And of course, ASEAN+6 is a very important forum for discussing trade issues and property right and so on. But as you said, we have maintained this kind of structure for 15 years, and we have the very close communication. One of the merits is there is no English-speaking native, except maybe Singaporean. So if Australian comes and Indian comes, they dominate the discussion. So there is an advantage of keeping this structure for non-native English speakers. That is one thing. Third, I think I want to say is, once again, I want to emphasize the importance of a real sector, as Mr. Shin said. Although we are obsessed by the financial crisis after 2007, but we still have so many development issues, and we still have so many real sector issues. And again, in Asia especially, there are very huge potentials of growth because of young population, because of the better governance, and because of transitions in some countries. So we should reap this benefit with the utmost efforts. So in that regard, development bank of like ADB has a very important, the World Bank, ADB and so on, have a very important role to play. And also JICA and other bilateral institutions, including the COICA, and also Thailand has a South Cooperation. So by making those efforts in development area and the real sector area, this should help our system once again very resilient even to the financial crisis. So I want to once again emphasize that point.
Thank you very much. Jae-Yun, your last word.
Thank you. Well, so Nagao-san always speaking ahead of me, so he talk what I want to say. So I want to emphasize we discussed the crisis prevention. It's a passive way. I want to emphasize more aggressive or affirmative way. So as my Vietnam colleague said, we have a very big development gap or maturity gap in our member ASEAN Plus 3 countries. So crisis prevention is very important, but as important as the development of the infrastructure, especially financial some infrastructure, software is very important. So I think it's ADB is very well positioned to support this kind of some initiative. If not, then crisis prevention is, I think, it's no more meaning, I think.
Nemoto-san, do you have any last word?
Yeah, this is my personal view, but we have to differentiate the crisis from outside and the crisis inside. So if we talk about crisis prevention, our basic assumption is that the crisis come from abroad, the Lehman crisis, Eurozone crisis. So I agree with Kawai-san and Ajis that size, bigger is better. But there are certain cases that the crisis from inside. And in order to prevent the moral hazard, sometimes the bigger size may induce very loose macro policies. So also that is our role to prevent that kind of loose macroeconomic policy. So I agree with both of you, but also, and that is also the lesson from the Europe's case that EC with the economists of 20 times our size, but have to borrow the credibility of the IMF in order to recover the confidence from the market.
Problem they have.
So we need to differentiate the crisis from outside and crisis inside. That is my personal view.
Your last word, Aziz?
Well, two things. One is to our colleague from Vietnam. I want to share the good news and the bad news. The good news is that we observe with the increased integration in the region, there is also a process of convergence, meaning the CMLV is catching up in terms of growth and so forth. So integration leads to convergence. The bad news is that the income inequality within each country, it's worsening. So you have improved inequality between countries, between member countries, but worsening income inequality within each country. The second thing is, maybe unlike Dr. Sin, I'm a little bit pessimistic with what is going on, because every day I notice the prospect of the world economy is darkening, and it is from that perspective I would like to restate what I said at the beginning. We have to be very, very careful, especially with the financial sector. Every time I read the news that there is financial innovation and so on, I'm worried, because this financial sector, precisely like what all the speakers mentioned, seems to be disconnect with the real sector. And at the end of the day, it's really the real sector that determines the W, which is the welfare. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Distinguished guests, I got the phone call 6 months ago from Ioannis to ask Thailand to help organize this Thailand ADBIMF conference. So it's happened here today, and I would like to thank very much for all participants, including the people, the top level from the ADB and the IMF. So it's the eminent persons we have here and all the participants as well. I think the last sessions, we can conclude that it's come out quite okay for this conference. Thank you for all very much. Could you give me a big hand for my panelists here? Thank you.
Thank you very much for a truly thought-provoking and highly enlightening session. May I now ask our distinguished members of this third panel kindly to pose for a group photo taking session together. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of our conference today. It has beyond doubt been an exceptionally constructive and fruitful event. On behalf of the Asian Development Bank and the International Monetary Fund, I would like to thank all our distinguished speakers today for their excellent presentations and discussions. Last but not least, please also allow me to thank all of you here for spending your precious time with us, as well as for your insightful comments to the discussions. We really appreciate them. Before you leave, please ensure that you do not forget any belongings behind. For those who will be traveling outbound, bon voyage, I wish you a safe journey. Thank you very much.